What is up, Dynasty nerds, nerd herd? How y'all doing today? It's your man, Jordan Rains, back again with In My Defense, the Dynasty Nerds flagship IDP show. While you're here, like the channel, subscribe, leave a comment down below, say, hey, happy to have you along with me today. Today, we are going to continue the series that I started 2 weeks ago. We are going to talk about the top 12 players at a position. We're going to finish off the series. We're going to talk through the top 12 defensive line players of the year for 2020 and, kind of see who's there, who wasn't there, who we're projecting to go back, and just kind of see how that whole situation pans out. So again, thank you for joining me today. Like I said, make sure you subscribe to the channel and go over to the Nerd Herd and make sure you're subscribed to the Nerd Herd and you check out the Dynasty Nerd GM tool, which is super awesome. So that's all from me for right now. We'll go ahead and get to the show. I'll be right back. All right, we're back. Let's jump right in. I'm going to start by reading you off the top 12 players at the defensive line position for the 2020 season. Number 1 was TJ Watt with 307 points. Number 2 was Zadarius Smith coming through with 233 points. Aaron Donald came in at number 3 with 225 points. Jason Pierre-Paul, 224.1 points. DeForest Buckner, 219 points. Leonard Williams, 219 points. Myles Garrett, number 7, 215 points. Monte Sweat, number 8, 208.5. J.J. Watt, 205.9 in the top 10. Harold Landry came in at 10, 205. Brian Burns, also 205. And then Shaq Barrett came in at 204. So his last 4 guys were all within 2 points of each other. So, really, the DL position did kind of taper off and then plateau there. TJ Watt, let's just go ahead and start at the tippy-tip top. He's kind of in a class of his own, kind of on that, if you watch the linebacker show, we did talk about, how many impact plays he makes. In the DL spot, we don't count those as the sacks as an impact play. So he still had 33 without counting his sacks, had 307 points, led the league in sacks, 15, led the league in tackles for loss, 23, third season with 7 or more pass breakups, league leading 41 quarterback hits. TJ Watt, he's a whole tier above. You look at the score that Zadarius Smith put up. It's a whole 70 points behind TJ Watt, and he's so consistent too. So if you play on a platform where these guys, a lot of these guys, some of them may or may not be DL eligible, depending on how your league is set up. We advocate at Dynasty Nerds for the defensive line players, the defensive back players, the linebacker players, and IDP 1, 2, 3 scoring, which you can go check out the article on that. But, in that the base setup for that, we keep those positions lumped together, edge rushers, so Sleeper does a really good job of that. But, TJ Watt, he's the DL1 on the season. If he's not DL eligible in your league, I'm sorry for you. Then it would have been Zadarius Smith, who came in at number 2. Zadarius Smith, he actually played yesterday. If you watched the game, did not make it past Tom Brady, but Zadarius Smith had a great season. Second season he's had in a row that's really good like this. 6th season in the league with the Green Bay Packers. 233 points in IDP 1, 2, 3 scoring. You really like to see he had 20 impact plays. And again, we don't count sacks for defensive line players. And then he had 12.5 sacks on top of that. So that's a really nice season for Zadarius Smith. I believe he's only 27, 28 right now. So he has several more years of high-level production like this. Again, it's his second year of finishing in the top, 3 or 4 at sacks and as a top defensive line player. So good on Zadarius Smith. I don't really know why the Ravens end up letting go of him. He's that's where he came from when he went to Green Bay. He was a rotational player on the Ravens, but they end up letting him go, and he has thrived since going to Green Bay. So good on him. Number 3, Aaron Donald. Everyone knows Aaron Donald. 7th season in the NFL with the Los Angeles Rams. 16 games played, 18 total impact plays. Not quite the season you expect from Aaron Donald, especially in the tackle for loss department. He's been averaging, since he came into the league, he's averaged 20 a season. This year only had 14. His quarterback hits are still way up there. He had 28 sacks. He got his 4th season in a row getting double-digit sacks. That's awesome on him. So combined tackles, he's never really a big combined tackle guy. He usually hits in that 40 range, 45. He had exactly 45 this year. Always disruptive, 4 forced fumbles. So, he's probably going to get the Defensive Player of the Year award. I would vote for TJ Watt. But, Aaron Donald from the defensive tackle position, you have to give him the credit that he's due to get, 4 seasons in a row, double-digit sacks. And, the 2 seasons in his career, he doesn't have double-digit sacks. He has 9 and 8. Yeah, I mean, hats off to Aaron Donald on another great season. Number 3, Jason Pierre-Paul. You'll notice a lot of these guys are a little bit older, and you can find a lot of value in IDP, in Dynasty, especially on older players. Jason Pierre-Paul finished 11th with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He did make it past Darius Smith and Aaron Rodgers and is on his way to a Super Bowl. 16 games played, 224.1 points, 21 impact plays, which is really awesome to see. He's, for whatever reason, nobody really realized how good he was last year. I remember, if you listen to my podcast last year, which we used to do, but now check out the IDP Army podcast. But I said something last year because coming into the season, especially in redraft, Jason Pierre-Paul was ranked like defensive line player like 29 or 30 in Fantasy Pros consensus. And I thought that was ridiculously low. I think I had him well into my top 15 coming into the season. I can double check that, but he ended the season in the top 5. I actually saw him, not even lying to you, in a $100 buy-in league. Someone dropped him. My buddy picked him up. So he ended up with a top 4 player at his position in IIP 1-2-3 scoring league. And Jason Pierre-Paul, I mean, you think he's old, but he's not that old. Like he's probably going to play 2-3 more years of some good football. 4 forced fumbles this season. That was a career high. And I believe he had 2 interceptions as well, which was a career high. So great season from Jason Pierre-Paul. He finished really high up here this year. Good for him, and maybe he'll go win a Super Bowl. Coming in at number 5 on the list is one of my favorite players in the NFL, perennially underrated, DeForest Buckner. 5th season in the league with the Indianapolis Colts right now. 15 games played, 219 points, 17 total impact plays. He really, didn't really miss a beat coming from the San Francisco 49ers to Indianapolis. He ended up with 2 more sacks this year than he had last year with the 49ers. He's such a high tackle floor guy, which is what I love about him for the defensive tackle position. He averages about 65 tackles a season, which, like I said, Aaron Donald, who everyone loves, he puts up about 40. So you're getting 20 more tackles out of this guy, and he gets similar sack numbers, but not really high on the tackle for a loss. But another good year from DeForest Buckner. He and Justin Houston had a couple of really bang up games for the Colts. He had a safety this year, which was nice to see. He's always disruptive. He gets a couple pass deflections a year, which is where some of those impact plays are coming from. So DeForest Buckner at 25 years old, I believe 25, 26. Let me double check here. 26 years old. I mean, he's got a lot of green grass ahead of him. He's going to be bringing a lot of IDP fantasy football managers glory titles for a while to come. If y'all want to check out where they're ranked in our IDP rankings on site, go sign up for Dynasty Nerds. I believe that's like the cheapest one, like $3, and you see all of our rankings for Dynasty Nerds. You can see all of our IDP rankings. You can store mine. You can do consensus, all that good stuff. So the last videos I was telling you where some of the guys were ranked on this one. Well, we'll leave a little mystery. Go check it out if you're interested. Number 6, we got Leonard Williams, 6th season with the New York Jets, 16 games played, 219 points. I mean, this is a guy that was essentially left for dead by me. I talk so much crap on Leonard Williams because he didn't do anything pretty much his whole career. Nothing. I mean, he had 11 sacks this year, 11 and a half. He's got a career 29 sacks. So he has over a third of his sack production this year. He's played in 7 seasons in the NFL. Guy's played 95 games. That's insanity. Did most of his work this year. He has been good for tackles. He did get a lot of tackles with the Jets. I will give him that. But he produced his highest sack numbers this year, produced his highest tackle for loss number this year, produced his highest quarterback hit number this year. So, I've brought it up before. They got something cooking up there in New York with the Giants right now. Blake Martinez, Jabril Peppers, and we got Leonard Williams kind of showing himself a little bit out there. So they got Bradbury, we got Xavier McKinney, we got Logan Ryan. So if we can just, I say we, I don't know why I'm doing that. If they can just figure out what they're going to do with old Danny Dimes, and they can get if Sterling Shepard's brain wasn't, macaroni and cheese or scrambled eggs right now, that guy, I wish he could just play a full season completely healthy because he's flashed a lot in his career, but that's offense. But anyway, back to Leonard Williams. Great season for him. 6th overall finish, which was kind of crazy. He had a couple of really big pop games too, which is always nice to get from a defensive tackle, especially if you play in defensive tackle specific leagues. He and Quinnen Williams, both New York players, really brought home the bacon for their fantasy managers this season. We're going to slide on down to number 7. Yep, we finally got to him. Myles Garrett, Fourth season with the Cleveland Browns. He got that big paycheck in the offseason. He was I believe he was the Browns Man of the Year. You know, how quickly we forget about the, swinging the helmet, which swinging a helmet, kind of, it is what it is. I don't have a strong opinion on it. I thought people blew it a little bit out of proportion. But anyway, Man of the Year for the Browns nominee, so good for him. 14 games played, like I said, 215 points, 18 impact plays. Not a monster number. I really would have liked to see that a little higher from one of the league's most elite pass rushers, but he still managed to, 4 of those are forced fumbles, so he's always disruptive. He did end up with 12 sacks in an abbreviated season again. I say that again. He has a lot of these abbreviated seasons in his career. I feel like he gets banged up a little bit. 10 tackles for loss. Myles Garrett, if there's anything you could really knock him for as far as IDP is concerned is he's never really pushed up into that elite tackle number. So when I'm talking an elite tackle number for a defensive line player, I'm talking like Joey Bosa and Danielle Hunter. For the things I do knock them for, not being good impact players, getting pass deflections or forced fumbles, they are really, really good about, playing all the snaps, but also getting tackles on those snaps. So when they don't get sacks, they're still going to pile up tackle numbers. So if you go look at the career of Joey Bosa or Danielle Hunter, they have a really high tackle floor on a weekly and season-long base. It's like 65, 70. Just for perspective, just to give you an idea of how they make up some of those points they don't get in impact plays, that a player like Myles Garrett, who does get a few impact plays, not a ton this year, but does get some. He's had better seasons. He had his highest tackle number of his career this year, 48. Last year, 30. The year before that, 44, 31. When you compare that to somebody like Joey Bosa, who's putting up 65, 70, Danielle Hunter, 65, 70, it is a little bit scary to roll him out there because those weeks that he doesn't get a sack, his floor is a little bit low. The good thing, he's Myles Garrett. He's probably going to get a sack. I won't bore you with the story of the game this season where I lost because he didn't get a sack, but that was not a good time. All right, number 8 on the list, we're going to move on to Monte Sweat. This is one of my favorite players, great second-year player. I wrote about him last year for Dynasty Nerds in my rookie rusher recap article where I went through, that 2019 draft class had a lot of really good pass rushers and edge rushers and defensive linemen in it. Wrote 3 articles on Dynasty Nerds on it over that class. Josh Allen, I covered Nick Bosa, Max Crosby, Monte Sweat, Ed Oliver, Chase Winovich, Jeffrey Simmons, Brian Burns. I think there was somebody else I wrote about, but Monte Sweat was one of my favorite guys to read about. He was a 16-game starter in 2019. Those out there this year played 16 games. Again, 208 points, 22 impact plays, which is a big jump up from the previous year. 12 tackles for loss, which I love. I love getting behind the line of scrimmage. But the thing that's really kind of underrated about Monte Sweat is the pass deflections. If you guys, if you listen to me on my fantasy football show or my channel, our podcast, I talk about pass deflections a lot because it's a great play, a great impact play for defensive linemen to get because it's a 3-point play. And the thing I love about it too is it creates a turnover opportunity. And that's particularly true with Monte Sweat. It became, really clear this year. He had 6 pass deflections. 3 of those pass deflections that Monte Sweat jumped up with his long-ass arms and batted out of the sky directly led to interceptions. One by him, he batted it up, caught it, took it back for a touchdown. Another one, he batted up, I believe this was the very next week. He batted it up into the air, and John Bostic came down with it. I think that was against the Steelers. And then he also had one against Russell Wilson, where he batted it up in the air. Russell Wilson's rolling out. Monte Sweat, as kind of a little bit out of coverage on this play, and he throws it. Monte Sweat jumps up, knocks it into the air. Actually, if you go read my impact play article on Dynasty Nerds, I have a tweet. You can actually watch this play. He bats another pass in the air, and Daron Payne, the defensive tackle, catches it. So 3 pass deflections of his 6 directly led to turnovers. One of the most underrated plays in football, in my opinion, especially for defensive lineman players, to be able to do that, create those kinds of opportunities without just rushing the passer. It's so binary. People are just tackles and sacks. No, there's so much more nuance to football. And things like pass deflections make a huge difference, and they aren't talked about at all. He has more pass deflections right there this season, 6, than you might have to double check me on this, but I think that's more pass deflections in this season than Joey Bosa and Danielle Hunter have combined in their career. Now, go double check that. I'm about 90% sure on that one. Leave me a comment below. Tell me if I was right or wrong. But Monte Sweat, I love him. He's super high in my Dynasty rankings on Dynasty Nerds, which you should go check out. We'll slide on down to number 9, J.J. Watt, the old man himself. Old. He's only like 31, people. We think about J.J. Watt as like this 40-year-old like zombie. He's in his 10th season in the NFL. He finishes a top 10 defensive line player. We just talked about Jason Pierre-Paul, who's in his 11th season in the NFL. He finished higher than him. There's this mental disconnect in our heads between what the physical human body, especially of an elite athlete, is able to do later in life. Compared to me, I'm 30, I'm bumming around, like, oh man, my back hurts, my stomach hurts. These guys, that's not how they live. So Tom Brady, going to the Super Bowl, when you're on that level, you can just keep going. JJ Watt, I have found myself fading him. I'm talking about an overall narrative here, kind of digressing a little bit, but you can find so much value in older IDP players, especially defensive line players, Cameron Jordans, JJ Watts. Like I said, my buddy, literally in a $100 buy-in league, a guy dropped Jason Pierre-Paul over this last summer. My buddy picked him up. Like, free money. You're printing free money because he's old. That narrative's just out there. All right. Anyway, back to JJ Watt. Played all 16 games. Oh, he gets hurt. He played all 16 games again, too. 205.9 points. 26 impact plays. He still got it, ladies and gentlemen. He still got it. Yeah, he didn't put up gaudy sack numbers. He still got it. 14 tackles for loss, only 5 sacks, still a major disruptor. He had an interception. He had multiple pass deflections, something he has every year. He's still one of the highest tackle for loss leaders in the league. He was, I think, top 6, 7 still at his older age. And he has no help. He's doing everything by himself. This guy, he could have a 15 sack season and still, I believe it with all my heart. I know he didn't look necessarily the part this year, but again, that Texans team had nothing going for it. They were swimming upstream, and they were losing the whole way. We'll move on down to number 10, Harold Landry. Yeah, he's not the greatest pass rusher in the world, but again, I like to talk about, especially for IDP, the importance of having auxiliary stats, doing more than just the binary tackles and sacks. He did have a lot of tackles, 59 combined tackles. He played all 16 games, 205 points, 16 impact plays, not a massive number, but 10 of those are tackles for loss, 5 of those are pass deflections. He did have an interception this year as well. Plays a ton of snaps, and it just goes to show that you can finish in the top 10 at defensive line, and you don't have to get double-digit sacks. Harold Landry did it. J.J. Watt did it. Monte Sweat only had 9 sacks. He's a top 10 guy. DeForest Doctor had 11. I believe everybody else had about 11. Jason Pierre-Paul might have just been a smidge under. I think he might have had 9 or 10. But you don't have to have gaudy sack numbers to still be a productive and highly productive, elite almost defensive lineman in IDP. You just have to find the auxiliary stats. You have to find out where these guys succeed outside of that, assuming sacks come in bunches and that'll hit a projected number of, your average. I think this guy is going to get over under 8. If you can put that number on a guy, and then you can figure out if he's an impact player or not, if he's a high tackle player or not, that's where you can find out where you can make up some of these points and find out who really has the upside to, finish in that top 12. Another guy right here, a perfect example, slide on down. Brian Burns did not have 10 sacks. He had a second season in the league with Carolina Panthers, had 9 sacks, 15 impact plays, 205 points, just like Harold Landry. He had 9 sacks, 3 forced fumbles. He and Harold Landry both played a boatload of snaps and both had a boatload of tackles. Brian Burns, super high tackle count this year, 58. Like I said, Harold Landry, 59. If you couple that with 15 impact plays and, 5, 6, 7 sacks, you're going to be able to get there. So good year for him. I love Brian Burns in Dynasty. Shaquille Barrett, rounding out the top 12. A 7th season in the league with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, played 15 games, so he got here in an abbreviated season. A couple other guys did as well. 204 points, so only one behind. Like I said, a couple of these guys ahead of him. 17 impact plays, which is a big drop-off from last year, but still a solid number. He only had 9 sacks this year. Now, he had 20 sacks, and the big thing was, he won't get 20 sacks again. Well, people said that reactionarily as if anyone said he would. I never heard anybody speak those words. I don't think anybody was that foolish. But the trendy thing was say, well, I don't think he'll get 20 sacks again. Well, no one's saying that, so I don't know why you're rebuffing it. But anyway, he did get 9 still. He did finish in the top 12 as well. He's only 27, 28. He made a boatload of money this year. The quarterback hits and the sacks weren't there the same way they were. His pass deflections were up, though. His forced fumbles were still there, not quite what he had the year before. but his pressure numbers were still elite. He still got close to the quarterback. He just didn't get home like he did last year. So do not fade Shaq Barrett. The box score did come back down to earth. But I mean, if you watch this game, we're in the postseason. This game yesterday on Monday or Sunday. That defense, Tom Brady threw 3 interceptions. Shaq Barrett, Jason Pierre-Paul put Aaron Rodgers' ass in the dirt several times. That's not an accident. That line is not, a joke. Aaron Rodgers is not easy to take down. They have a solid running game, but these guys are good. So Shaq Barrett finishing last year on Sleeper, he was not DL eligible. He was just a linebacker. He still finished as like the top 3 or 4 linebacker. If he would have been DL eligible on Sleeper last season, he would have finished as the number 1 overall defensive line player. So he went from number 1 to 12. Yeah, it's a drop, but he still finished as a defensive line 1. I know for a fact he was being drafted like right around that defensive line 20, 25 linebacker, defensive line, whatever. Sleeper did make the switch a little late in the season, but I forgive them because we all make mistakes. So shout out Sleeper. All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Dynasty nerds of all ages. That's it. That's it for me. That's your top 12 defensive line players from the 2020 season. Do me a favor, go into the comments and tell me, do you think Chase Young finishes in the top 12 in 2021? So who's going to fall out? Some of these guys aren't going to be there next year. We know that. Every year things change. Do you think Chase Young takes that next step forward, ascends into the top 12 defensive line players on the season, assuming, full health, 14, 15 games played? So thank you for tuning in. I appreciate you. This has been In My Defense. I'm your man, Jordan Rains. Make sure you hit the like, subscribe button, leave that comment. I'm interested to hear where people are on Chase Young as we go forward. And yeah, I appreciate y'all. Nerd Herd, I'm out. I'll see you next week. Be good.